When we moved into the quiet blue house on Pine Hollow Lane, I thought we were getting a fresh start. After my divorce, it was just me and Lily, my 6-year-old daughter with the brightest smile and a vivid imagination. The place was small, old, and smelled like dust and lavender, but it was ours. The first week was uneventful. Lily picked the bedroom with the big bay window, and I let her decorate it with fairy lights and pastel pillows. She spent most of her time playing with her dolls or coloring. Then one afternoon, while I was unpacking boxes in the kitchen, I heard her chatting away in her room. "But you said you had one, Aunt Carol," she said, followed by a giggle. "No, silly. I don't like baths." I paused. She didn't have an aunt named Carol. In fact, the only Carol I knew was the realtor. Later that night, I asked her, "Hey, who's Aunt Carol?" She beamed. "She lives here with us. She's my friend. She says the house was hers a long time ago." I smiled awkwardly. "You mean like a ghost?" Lily tilted her head. "No, Mommy. She's just invisible. Only I can see her." I laughed it off. Kids and their imaginary friends, right? But the next day, I noticed Lily had set the dinner table for 3. "One's for you," she said. "One for me, and one for Aunt Carol." I humored her. We had dinner with the invisible guest. She even made a space for her on the couch during movie night. "Aunt Carol likes scary movies," she whispered. I brushed it all off, until a few nights later when I heard Lily crying from her room. I rushed in to find her curled up in a ball, trembling. "Lily, baby, what's wrong?" "She's sad tonight," she whispered. "Aunt Carol misses her little boy. He died in the bathtub." My blood ran cold. I crouched beside her. "What did you say?" "She says he went underwater and didn't come back up. He was 3. She cries about it sometimes." I froze. "Did someone at school tell you that story?" She shook her head. "Number Aunt Carol did." I tried to dismiss it, thinking maybe she overheard something. Maybe it was from a movie or a storybook. But something about the way Lily said it, the detail, the sadness, it lingered. The next morning, while Lily was at school, I decided to look into the house's history. I contacted the local records office. After some digging and a few phone calls, I found something that made my stomach twist. In 2005, a woman named Carol Dunning lived here. She had a 3-year-old son, Matthew, who drowned in the upstairs bathtub while she was doing laundry. Carol never recovered. A few months later, she was committed after neighbors found her trying to draw a bath for Matthew at midnight. She passed away in a psychiatric hospital 3 years later. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Lily had no way of knowing that. I didn't even know that. That night, I sat with Lily during bedtime. "Sweetie," I said gently, "can you tell me more about Aunt Carol?" Lily smiled sleepily. "She likes my room. She says it used to be Matthew's. Sometimes she brings me old toys he liked." "Do you see her all the time?" "Only when I'm alone," she said. "But she doesn't like when you're around. She says you're mean to her." I tried to smile. "I'm not mean, am I?" Lily hesitated. "She says you don't let me take baths because you're scared." That night, I dreamt of water, cold, dark water, and a little boy's hand slipping under the surface. Over the next few weeks, things got darker. Lily stopped sleeping through the night. I'd find her sitting on the edge of her bed, rocking. "She cries a lot," she whispered. "She misses him. She says I look like him." I started locking the bathroom door at night. Not for Lily, but for myself. I'd hear the water running when no one was in there. Once I found the tub full, with Lily's rubber duck floating slowly in the center. I asked her if she did it. She shook her head. "She wants to take me there. She says she can make me like Matthew." That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. I scheduled a therapist, thinking maybe Lily was processing the divorce in a strange way. But before we could go to the first appointment, things escalated. It was a Thursday night when I woke to Lily screaming. I bolted from my room and found her in the hallway, pounding on the bathroom door. "She locked it! Mommy, she locked it!" I twisted the knob. Locked. I could hear water running inside. I kicked it open and found the tub filling to the brim. Steam curled in the air, but there was no one there. Lily sobbed. She wants me to stay. She said this is where the real house is. Her house. I yanked her into my arms and slammed the door shut. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. The next morning I packed a bag and booked a room at a hotel across town. But Lily resisted. She'll be mad if we leave, she whispered. She said she won't be alone again. I ignored her protests and drove us out of there. That night we both slept deeply for the first time in weeks, but it didn't last. The next evening Lily stared at the hotel mirror for almost an hour. She followed us. She finally said, "She's mad." I tried to stay calm. "How do you know?" She said, "You're a bad mother, that if you really loved me, you'd let me stay with her." I choked down my panic. "That's not true, Lily. I love you more than anything." She looked at me with something strange in her eyes. She said, "You left your husband because he saw her too." I froze. Lily didn't know about the night my ex screamed that there was a woman sitting at the foot of our bed, watching him sleep. He'd been drinking, I told myself. Just a hallucination. But now, that night I saw her. I woke up to the sound of whispering. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the bed, staring at the far corner of the room. In the dim light, I saw a figure. A woman, mid-30s, drenched. Her hair hung like wet rope, and her eyes, God, her eyes, looked like hollow pools. She reached out toward Lily. "She belongs to me," the woman said. "You don't deserve her." I grabbed Lily and shouted, "You can't have her!" The woman screamed. The lights flickered. The mirror cracked. And then she was gone. We didn't go back to the house. I sold it within a month. Took a loss. Didn't care. We moved to a different state. New school. New job. New everything. It's been a year. Lily doesn't talk about Aunt Carol anymore. But sometimes I find the tub filling by itself. And once Lily asked if Matthew could come too, just for a visit. I told her no. She cried for hours. And some nights when the house is quiet, I still hear water running and a soft voice whispering. She was mine first. We had just moved into the kind of house people dream about. White picket fence, a wraparound porch, a backyard big enough for our son, Ethan, to grow up in. After years of cramped apartments and noisy neighbors, it felt like peace had finally come knocking. My husband, Derek, and I were first-time parents, and our 1-year-old boy was just starting to babble. He'd point at things, mumble nonsense, and occasionally surprise us with a mama or baba. We chalked it all up to the joys of toddlerhood, until one morning, as I fed him in the high chair, Ethan stopped chewing and turned his head sharply toward the empty corner of the kitchen. His little mouth curled into a smile, and he waved. "Who are you waving at, baby?" I asked with a laugh. He didn't answer, just kept waving and giggling softly, like he was watching someone make silly faces at him. It became routine. Every day, same corner, smile, giggle, wave. We assumed it was just imagination. Kids are weird, right? But then he said it. "Uncle's here," Ethan said clearly one evening, staring into that same empty space. I dropped the spoon I was holding. "Derek," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. He was already standing in the doorway, looking pale. "You heard that?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Did he say, Uncle?" I crouched next to Ethan. "What uncle, sweetie?" Ethan grinned. "Uncle Jake." The air drained from the room. Jake was my brother. He'd died in a car crash 10 years ago, long before Ethan was born, long before Derek and I had even met. I stood up so fast I knocked over Ethan's sippy cup. Derek picked him up while I stared at the corner. It was still just a corner, painted eggshell white. A tiny crack ran along the baseboard. Nothing else, but the room felt off. That night, Ethan set a chair at the dinner table and insisted no one sit in it. "That's Uncle's chair," he said. Derek tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. We ate in silence, occasionally glancing at the empty seat beside our son. Things got worse after that. The house started feeling cold at night. Not normal cold, deep cold. The kind that made your breath visible. We'd wake up shivering despite thick blankets and a running heater. The thermostat would read 72, but it felt like 40. One night, Derek heard toys moving in Ethan's room around 2 a.m. He rushed in, expecting to find Ethan out of bed. Ethan was sound asleep, but every toy in the room had been moved. His stuffed bear was propped up on the windowsill, army men lined along the dresser, and his rocking horse. It was slowly swaying back and forth. Derek picked him up and slept with him in our room that night. The next morning, Ethan said, "Uncle likes playing with my toys." I was done pretending it was innocent. We brought in a child therapist. She was kind and professional, but after 2 visits, she admitted something strange. Ethan showed no signs of trauma or delusion. He was just talking to someone we couldn't see, and he believed it fully. One night after putting Ethan to sleep, I decided to check the attic. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was dread. The door creaked open, and the wooden stairs groaned under my weight. I clicked on the flashlight and aimed it around. Dust, boxes, spider webs. Typical. But in the far corner, I found something I didn't expect. A photograph. It was curled at the edges, black and white, clearly old. It showed a boy, maybe 5 or 6, sitting beside a man in a rocking chair. The man looked eerily like Jake, except Jake had never lived in this house. It wasn't even in the same state. I showed the photo to Derek, who turned white. That's him. That's the man Ethan's been describing. How would he know? He didn't answer. I started digging through old documents in the basement. The house had been built in the 1940s. Over the decades, many families had come and gone, but one stuck out. A boy named Jacob Allen had died here in 1996. Car crash. He was visiting his sister and never made it home. My heart stopped. Jake's full name was Jacob Allen Rivers. It wasn't just a name. It was him. Was this some bizarre coincidence? Or had Jake somehow followed us? The next night, Ethan refused to go to bed. Uncle said, "I don't need to sleep anymore," he whispered. I tried to stay calm. "Why not, baby?" "Because he's gonna take me home." That was it. I packed a bag and told Derek we were getting a hotel. But the moment we stepped outside, Ethan screamed like his skin was burning. "Uncle said I can't leave." He thrashed in my arms, face red, eyes wide with terror. It took both of us to get him in the car. The moment we crossed the neighborhood sign, he passed out. At the hotel, he slept peacefully. No cold, no toys moving, no invisible conversations. I wanted to leave everything behind, sell the house, burn it, never look back. But Derek had other plans. He wanted to talk to Jake, to get closure. He said if Jake's spirit had attached to our son, we had to confront it directly. I didn't agree, but I let him do it. We returned the next evening. Ethan stayed at my sister's place. Derek set up a camera in the living room and turned off the lights. I watched from the kitchen, heart pounding. "Jake," he said softly, "if you're here, we need to understand why." The silence was thick. Then the temperature dropped. I saw Derek's breath. A soft creaking came from the corner. Then, a voice. Not loud, not angry, just broken. "He's mine now," I screamed. Derek stood up, backing away. "Jake, he's just a baby. He's not yours." The corner darkened, like a shadow was growing there, swallowing the light. "You left me," the voice said. "You moved on. I didn't. We didn't even meet until after you died," Derek shouted. "You're not her Jake." Silence, and then a terrible sound. A baby crying. Not Ethan, a different baby. I swear I heard a woman screaming too. We fled the house. Later that night, we realized something. The Jake in the photo wasn't my Jake. He was a Jake, a different man entirely. And the baby in the photo, he was the one who died. I called a local historian and showed her the photo. Her eyes went wide. "That's from the Allen family. The boy died in this house. The father never recovered. People say his ghost haunts the attic, looking for his son." I realized what had happened. The ghost in the house wasn't my brother. It was something older, something lonelier, something desperate. It had latched onto Ethan because it thought he was its child. And the name Uncle Jake? That was the bait. A universal name. One our child recognized because of stories we told him about my Jake. The entity used that to trick him, to get closer, to take him. We never went back. The house is still there, empty, for sale, cheap. Sometimes I check the listing. They've updated the photos, but the last image always chills me. It shows the living room, clean, bright, except in the corner. There's a shadow, a small chair, and a child's toy rocking slowly back and forth. We got the baby monitor for peace of mind. New parents. You get it? Sleep-deprived, anxious, constantly checking to see if your newborn is breathing. Our son Mason had just turned 3 months old. He was healthy, happy, and perfect. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom home in the outskirts of Missoula, Montana. Quiet neighborhood, tall pine trees out back, the kind of place where neighbors wave and deer wander into yards. I thought it was ideal to raise a child. Until the monitor changed everything. It was a sleek, top-of-the-line model with night vision, audio, two-way talking, even motion alerts. I could check the feed from my phone. Seemed like the smartest investment we made. For a while, it actually helped us sleep better. Then came that night. I was in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair, gently cradling Mason in my arms. He was already drifting off. His breath was warm against my collarbone. It was one of those moments you want to freeze forever. Then I got the alert. Motion detected, 11:42 p.m. I glanced down at my phone. The app opened automatically and showed a live feed from the monitor. What I saw made my stomach drop. Mason was in his crib, sleeping, calm, still, but he wasn't. He was in my arms. I stared at the screen. At first I thought it was a glitch, a delayed frame. Maybe the video had frozen, and it was showing an earlier image, but the timestamp said, "Live." I waved my hand in front of the crib. Nothing. I clapped. No response. The monitor still showed Mason lying peacefully in the crib, but I was holding him. I stood up slowly, my arms tightening around Mason. He stirred but didn't wake. I stepped toward the crib. Empty. Utterly, obviously empty. But on the screen, Mason remained there, was still sleeping. The hair on my neck stood up. I could feel something in the room. Not see, not hear, just feel. A shift in the air, like I wasn't alone. I turned off the monitor app and walked out of the nursery. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I showed the footage to my wife, Jenna. She's the logical one, the one who grounds me when I spiral. But even her face went pale. "Mason was with you the whole time, right?" she asked. I swear on my life. We backed up the footage on the app. It let us scroll back and view a timeline. At 11:42 p.m., the feed clearly showed Mason in the crib. For the next 7 minutes, he doesn't move, just breathing, twitching slightly like babies do. But at 11:49 p.m., something else appears. A figure. It's tall, at least 7 feet, emaciated. It glides into frame from the corner. No sound, no fanfare, like a shadow that forgets to obey physics. It moves with an unnatural slowness, a liquid motion, and stops at the side of the crib. Jenna covered her mouth. "What the hell is that?" It didn't have a face. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth gray void. Its long fingers dangled at its sides, twitching like they were learning how to move. Then it bent forward, slowly, and stared into the crib. It just watched. The video continued for 10 more minutes. The thing never moved, never left. Then the footage cut out. We didn't lose power. The monitor app didn't crash. The recording just ended on its own. That day, Mason was different. He slept for nearly 14 hours. His skin felt cold. Not sick cold, dead cold. We rushed him to the pediatrician. She ran tests, checked his vitals. Everything came back normal, except for a slight drop in body temperature, but nothing that alarmed her. She told us to let him rest, that babies go through sleep cycles, but we knew something had happened. That night I moved the crib into our bedroom. Jenna agreed. We weren't going to let him out of our sight. We turned the monitor off. No more apps. No more motion alerts. We didn't sleep anyway. Around 2 a.m., Mason began to cry. We both shot up in bed. I picked him up and gently rocked him. Jenna got his bottle. And then the monitor powered on. We hadn't touched it. We hadn't even plugged it in. But its tiny green light blinked on, and the screen lit up. Jenna screamed. The feed was Liv, showing the nursery, even though the monitor camera wasn't in there anymore. The crib was back in its original place, and in it was Mason, asleep just like the night before. I looked down. Mason was in my arms, awake, crying. The monitor screen flickered, and that thing appeared again. This time, it didn't stand still. It reached into the crib, lowering those horrible hands, as if trying to pick Mason up, but it hesitated. Its head, or whatever you'd call that blank surface, tilted to the side, and then it looked up, at the camera, number, at us. The screen shattered, glass flew across the room, the monitor hissed, smoked, and then went dead. We left that night, packed Mason into the car, grabbed whatever bags we could, and drove to Jenna's sister's place, 3 towns over. We didn't tell her the full story, just that something was wrong with the monitor, and our power kept going out. I think she knew we were lying, but she let us stay. The first few nights were quiet. Then on the 5th night, Mason stopped crying. That may sound like a good thing, but it wasn't. He always cried. He was a baby, hungry, wet, tired. He let you know. But this time, nothing, just silent. Even when we tried to wake him, he didn't respond. His body was cold again. Jenna sobbed in the bathroom. I held him close and whispered his name over and over. And then I saw it, on the baby monitor. The old one, still cracked, still fried, but somehow glowing from inside the suitcase. It showed the Yarom crib in the nursery, back at our house. The same crib we'd abandoned, and in it, Mason, sleeping. Next to him stood the faceless figure, but it wasn't still this time. It was rocking the crib back and forth, like a lullaby. I took a hammer and destroyed the monitor that night. We took Mason to a hospital in Missoula. They ran more tests. This time, they found a strange anomaly in his brain scans. Low electrical activity, almost like he was in a coma, though he was clearly awake and breathing. One doctor asked us if we'd ever considered sleepwalking episodes just in infants. Another suggested it might be night terrors, but none of them could explain the monitor, the duplicate Mason, the Blee entity watching him. We never went back to that house. We sold it within 2 weeks, took a huge loss, didn't care. The monitor was gone, but the dreams weren't. Both Jenna and I began having the same recurring nightmare. We're in the nursery, it's dark, the crib is there, but it's not empty. Inside is another Mason, pale, still, lifeless, and next to him, that faceless thing, whispering something we can't hear, always staring at us, always reaching. Last week, Mason turned 6 months old. He's smiling again, eating, playing, but sometimes at night he wakes up suddenly and points at the corner of the room, and he says just one word, in a whisper, like he's remembering something we told him to forget. Other. We've stopped asking what he means. It started like any normal Saturday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping stale coffee and skimming emails, when my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, bounded into the room holding a crayon drawing. "Daddy, look, it's us," she chirped. She handed it to me with both hands. The paper was warm and slightly damp, fresh from her creative storm. I smiled. There we were, me, my wife Claire, our baby boy Noah in his stroller, and Ellie herself with big purple bows in her pigtails. But something was wrong. There was a 5th person. A tall, lanky figure loomed behind the rest of us. He was completely blacked out with a thick marker, head to toe. No face, no eyes, no smile. Just there. A shadow, without detail. "Ellie," I said carefully. "Who's this?" She leaned her chin on the table and smiled like it was obvious. "That's Mr. Long. He stands behind me when I sleep." I chuckled. "Is he from a book? A dream, maybe?" "No," she said plainly. "He's real." That night I told Claire about it. We chalked it up to imagination. Kids see things, hear things, make up invisible friends. It's normal, isn't it? A week later, I found another drawing taped to the wall above Ellie's bed. It showed our house, this time. Same style, same crayon swirl. But Mr. Long was closer now, peeking in through her bedroom window, his head tilted in a crooked way. That night I removed the drawing, not because I was scared, but because I was uneasy. "There's a difference." Claire laughed it off again, told me I was overthinking. But I knew something was shifting in our home. Subtle things. Ellie's bedroom light flickered more often. The baby monitor picked up soft scratching sounds at odd hours. And Ellie began sleep-talking. "He's in the corner, Daddy," she whispered one night when I tucked her in. I turned, but there was nothing. 3 nights later, she woke up screaming. It was the kind of scream that tears through walls and marrow. I rushed in and found her curled in the corner of her bed, covers gripped in both fists. "He's under the bed now," she sobbed. "He says he wants to take me to his family." Claire ran in, picked her up, soothed her. I bent down with a flashlight and checked under the bed. Just dust and a few old stuffed animals. That morning she wouldn't talk much, just stared blankly at her cereal. Then she muttered, "His name is Mr. Long because he can stretch." I froze. "Stretch?" She nodded. "His arms get really long when he's mad." Claire told me to stop asking questions, to not feed into it, but I couldn't. I started sleeping in Ellie's room with her, camped out on a sleeping bag. Every time I began to drift off, I'd feel something, like the air was pressing in, like I was being watched. One night around 2 a.m., Ellie sat straight up in bed and whispered, "He's behind you." I spun around. Nothing, just shadows. A week later, things escalated. We found muddy footprints in Ellie's room, not shoe prints, bare feet, big ones, wide, flat. The carpet was stained near the edge of her bed, and the floorboards underneath felt damp and cold. The baby monitor in Noah's room began to emit a clicking noise every night between 1 a.m. and 1:10 a.m., like nails tapping rhythmically against the crib. Claire started to unravel. We argued constantly. I was obsessed with finding a rational explanation. She started sleeping with the lights on. We even brought in a child psychologist who told us very gently that it might be a trauma response. But Ellie had never been through any trauma. At least, not until now. One evening, Ellie came home from school with another drawing. I didn't even have to look at it to feel my stomach turn. This time, it was just her and Mr. Long. They were holding hands. Behind them was a dark hole, like a cave or tunnel, drawn in scribbled grays and blacks. A crooked sign next to it read in clumsy child handwriting, "Mr. Long's house." That night, I bolted all the windows shut. I kept the lights on. I sat in a chair by Ellie's bed, baseball bat in hand, coffee keeping me upright. But sometime around 3:15 a.m., I must have dozed off. When I woke, Ellie was gone. We searched the house, called her name. Nothing. Panic took over. Claire sobbed in the hallway, calling 911. I searched outside barefoot, screaming into the woods behind our house. Then Claire screamed from inside. Ellie was in her room, curled up in her bed, but there was something wrong with her. She was cold, too cold. She had dirt under her nails. Her clothes were slightly damp and smelled like pond water and mildew. And she wouldn't speak, just stared at the wall and whispered to herself. He showed me his family. They don't have faces either. We decided to leave. Claire packed the kids into the car, and we drove to her sister's house in Boise. But that night, in the guest room, Ellie drew one final picture. We didn't see it until morning. It showed our family again, only this time, We were the ones with blacked-out faces, and Mr. Long stood in the center, holding Ellie in one arm and Noah in the other. A blood-red smile was drawn where his mouth should be. Underneath, in shaky red crayon, were the words, "My new daddy. We've since moved 3 times. Every time we think we're safe, we find a new drawing. A shadow in the baby monitor, dirt on the floor, the smell of wet leaves in the hallway. Ellie doesn't speak much anymore. But sometimes, late at night, I hear her whisper from her bed. He's still watching. He wants a bigger family. We don't know who or what Mr. Long is. All we know is he came into our daughter's imagination and never left. And now, every time I look into Ellie's eyes, I wonder if I'm still her real father, or if he already took my place." We moved into the house 3 months after Ellie was born. It was a quiet, suburban place in Connecticut, the kind of home you'd find in a family movie. White picket fence, a cozy nursery, and that fresh start feeling. But now, I'd burn the place to the ground if I could. It started innocently enough. Every night at exactly midnight, Ellie would cry, not whimpering or fussing. This was full-on, blood-curdling screaming. Her tiny body would tense. Her face would go red. And worst of all, her eyes would lock onto the exact same spot on the ceiling. Same corner, same terror. At first, we brushed it off. Babies cry, right? Maybe it was colic. Maybe she was teething early. We read parenting blogs, switched formulas, changed sleep schedules, and even slept in shifts. But the pattern didn't budge. 11:59 p.m. silence. 12 a.m. screams. Every single night. We tried everything. Her pediatrician ran every test and gave us the same answer each time. She's perfectly healthy. But how do you explain a perfectly healthy baby acting like she's watching something horrible crawl out of the ceiling? My husband Dan joked that maybe she was seeing a ghost. He laughed. I didn't. So we got a camera, a top-of-the-line baby monitor with night vision and audio, the kind they use in NICUs. We mounted it in the corner opposite her crib, giving us a full view of the room. The first night we recorded, we sat on the couch, waiting. 11:55 p.m. Ellie was sound asleep. 11:58 p.m. She twitched, her fingers curling slightly. 12 a.m. She screamed like she'd just woken up in hell. We froze. I reached for the tablet that synced with the camera, rewound the footage and watched. At first I thought it was a glitch. A faint shimmer appeared near the ceiling. Then slowly, it began to descend. I leaned in. Dan stopped breathing. It wasn't a glitch. It was something. A translucent shape, humanoid, but distorted, like smoke in water, floated down from the ceiling corner just above Ellie's crib. It hovered there for about 45 seconds, then vanished, and right then, the crying stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. Dan dropped the tablet. We didn't sleep that night. We reviewed the footage the next morning in daylight, hoping maybe it wouldn't seem so bad. It was worse. The thing had no face, no distinct features, just a suggestion of a body and limbs. The way it moved made my skin crawl, slow, unnatural, too smooth, and it always appeared at the same spot, always at midnight. We showed the video to Dan's brother, a tech guy. He analyzed it for manipulation, interference, compression artifacts. Nothing, he said. If this is fake, it's better than Hollywood. But we hadn't faked anything. The second night, we watched again. Same time, same shape, same horror. I tried calling local priests, paranormal investigators. Most never answered or hung up when I mentioned we had footage. One woman agreed to come over, a retired psychic named Miriam who had done energy work or something. I didn't care what her qualifications were, I just wanted it to stop. She entered Ellie's room and froze. "Your ceiling?" she whispered. "That corner. There's a tear there." "A what?" "A tear. A thin place. Something is watching from the other side." I wanted to throw up. Miriam burned sage, said prayers in languages I didn't recognize, sprinkled salt in the corners. Ellie still screamed that night. The thing still came. Miriam never returned my calls. Week 3, Dan set an alarm and burst into Ellie's room at midnight with a flashlight and a baseball bat. He found nothing, but the footage showed the thing retreating, slithering back into the ceiling seconds before he entered. That's when the bruises started, small ones on Ellie's legs and arms. We thought maybe we were accidentally bumping her during diaper changes or putting her down too hard in our sleep-deprived haze. But one morning I lifted her onesie and found 5 long red scratches across her stomach, like fingers. I broke. I screamed so hard, I startled Ellie into tears. Dan took her to the ER, demanding someone run tests, check for infections, allergic reactions, anything. But the nurse just frowned and said the marks looked external. We were placed under a 24-hour watch by Child Protective Services. That night I sat in Ellie's room alone. No camera, no monitor, just me, my daughter, and the corner of the ceiling that had ruined our lives. 11:58 p.m. I hummed softly, rocking Ellie. 11:59 p.m. The room got cold, freezing. 12 p.m. Her eyes shot open and locked on the ceiling. I looked up. There it was. I don't know how to describe it except that it wasn't just a thing. It was a presence. I didn't see it with my eyes so much as feel it, pushing down on the air around me like gravity had shifted. The walls pulsed. The air buzzed like a power line. Ellie screamed louder than ever before. And then I heard it, a whisper, right in my ear. She's mine. I ran. We moved out 2 days later. Didn't sell the house. Didn't pack most of our things. We just grabbed Ellie, a few clothes, and fled to Dan's parents' place in upstate New York. We didn't tell them everything, just said the place felt off. But even here I feel it sometimes, like something is watching through the vents, like Ellie's being followed. And the worst part? She still cries at midnight, even now, even here. But now she doesn't look up at the ceiling. She looks at me. We had Ellie baptized. We tried therapy. We burned everything we'd brought from the old house. And for a few weeks, things got better. No crying, no shadows. But 2 nights ago, something changed. Dan went to check on her at midnight, just to be safe. I stayed in bed. He didn't come back right away. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I got up and went to the nursery. The door was open. The room was freezing. Ellie was sitting up in her crib, perfectly calm, silent. Dan was standing in the corner, the same corner from the old house, just standing there, staring up at the ceiling. "Dan?" I whispered. He didn't move. I stepped closer. "Dan?" He turned to me slowly. His face was pale, his mouth trembling, and in a voice I didn't recognize, he said, "She belongs to the ones above." I screamed and grabbed Ellie, backing out of the room. Dan collapsed moments later and didn't remember a thing. He said it was like he blacked out. He didn't even remember going into her room. We checked the baby monitor footage. At 11:59 p.m., everything was fine. At 12 a.m., Dan stood up from the couch and walked robotically toward the nursery. At 12:01, something climbed down from the ceiling and disappeared inside him. Now, I don't let Dan near her alone. I've booked a motel. We're leaving tonight. But before we go, I wanted to post this. I wanted someone, anyone, to know that it's real. The doctors don't believe us. The church turned us away. The camera footage vanished when we tried to upload it online. No one wants to listen, but it's happening. Every night at midnight, something comes. Something that wants her. And now I think I know why. I did some digging. Talked to the former owner of the house, an old woman who now lives in a care facility. She didn't say much, just one sentence, over and over. The child was never supposed to leave. But if you're reading this and you have a baby, check your ceiling at midnight, not for cracks, but for eyes. Because whatever it is, it's still coming, and next time, it might be yours.